hub,
and spoke. Audio Collective.
Control is new from Commercial Type. Originally drawn for interview by Christian Schwartz and Miguel Reyes, this sans serif is designed for flexibility and can bring tasteful modernism or 70s tight-knot touching exuberance to any layout. See Control and download a free trial version at commercialtype.com.
Hey there, guys. Season 5. You did it. You know, in magazines, we don't call them seasons, we call them volumes. And I don't even know what volume we're working on for Mountain Gazette, but we are working on the 202nd fall 2024 issue of Mountain Gazette. You can learn all about it by going to mountaingazette.com. But you listen to the podcast, I'll get on my Zoom call, mountaingazette.com. Our fall issue starts shipping later this fall. Enjoy the show.
While many printers have shifted their focus, Freeport Press has remained committed to the art of print. For companies that need a printing partner for magazines, look no further than Freeport Press. We offer the capabilities a customer would expect from a national printer while offering the level of customer service clients expect from a family-owned business. Freeport Press. We do print, and we do it well.
freeportpress.com.
Through the aughts, magazines like GQ became these very general interest publications where anything that might be interesting to a man belonged in GQ. And then with the rise of internet culture and social media, that really disrupted that. The internet and social media thrive on niche. It is very hard to be general interest in internet culture.
This is Print is Dead, Long Live Print, a podcast about magazines and the people who made and make them. I'm Deborah Bishop.
I'm Patrick Mitchell.
I'm Rachel Baker. I'm Maggie Bullock. In the past few weeks, Will Welch has taken a bit of flack for letting Beyoncé promote her new whiskey label on the cover of GQ's October issue, with an interview that one ex-user described as an intimate email exchange between GQ and several layers of Beyoncé's comms team. Whether that kind of thing rankles you or not, and yes, we asked him about it. In the 5 years since Welch took over, GQ seems to be doing as well or better than everyone else in the industry. Why? Ask around. He's got a direct line to celebrities who consider him a personal friend. He's got real credibility with the fashion people. And because of both of these things, advertisers love him. Perhaps most importantly, his boss, Anna Wintour, loves him.
The Atlanta-born Welch started his career at the alternative music and culture mag, The Fader, in the early aughts, and jumped to GQ in 2007. For a decade under EIC Jim Nelson, he operated as the magazine's fashion and culture svengali, eventually becoming the creative director of the magazine and the editor of the brand's fashion spinoff, GQ Style. In 2019, Wintour tapped him for the big job, editor-in-chief of GQ, a title that in 2020 was recast in the current Condé Nast survival mode as global editorial director of GQ, overseeing 19 editions around the world.
After speaking with Will only a few hours after the Beyoncé cover dropped, we get what all the fuss is about. He's a great sport with good hair and just enough of a southern accent, who's confident yet never cocky about his mission at GQ. So let other people bemoan the death of print. Will is having a blast at the Last Supper.
Will, we're so happy that you're here today because it's Beyoncé Day.
Oh my gosh, yes, it is.
Yes,
indeed.
and so we would like to thank you for putting a woman on the cover of GQ just in time for us, for our interview. It was really thoughtful, so thank you.
We worked really hard to get these particular stars to align, and I let Beyoncé know that we would be doing this today, and she was like, that's absolutely when we should time the cover drop. It's been great.
I love Rachel and Maggie. I'd do anything for them. That's pretty much what she said, right?
Yeah, 6 months ago, I was like, I'm going to go on this podcast. Would you like to be on the cover? And here's how we're going to time it. And she was like, perfect.
Bingo. Do you have any good behind-the-scenes goss for us on how the sausage got made on that shoot? Maggie and I have worked on Beyoncé cover stories several times, and we know she is a woman who knows what she wants. And so we were wondering if you could tell us anything from behind the scenes.
Rachel, I'm sorry. I'm too tempted. We just got to play the Southern people game really quickly. Yeah. This accent?
Jackson, Mississippi.
Jackson, Mississippi.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you are the ATL.
I'm Atlanta, Georgia. Yeah, ATL. It was never a huge accent on my side, but having been in New York, I don't know, since 1999, most traces are gone, but it's a point of view, an outlook on life, and occasionally a little glimmer of a Southern accent.
That's right. You'd be surprised to hear that I have lived in the North for most of my life.
I'm not surprised at all. Hold on to that thing like gold.
Really hung on. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Rachel, you're not going to defend me and point out that I'm from North Carolina? No?
Oh, I'm usually the Southern one.
I did hear a little in the defend me. We don't, in the South, we don't.
Only when it's cool.
The E's become I's.
Yeah, deep in.
Yeah. I don't have like hot BTS goss, but Rachel, to your point about Beyonce being a woman who knows what she wants, we tried to reflect that in the concept of the cover. So the cover has two Beyoncés on it. There's the big billboard of B, and then there's little B, who is actually hanging her own billboard. And the idea was about like a woman who is in control of her own image, who constructs her own public persona. And then the cover line is the business of being Beyonce Knowles Carter. So that concept of her being in charge of everything having to do with her life and her career is what we were trying to capture in the cover image.
And was that your baby, Will? Did you come up with that concept? Like, how does it happen behind the scenes?
Yeah. In the case of Beyonce, it's through a really deeply involved collaboration with her and her creative team. So all the aspects of the shoot were done through a combination of conversations, negotiations, all that kind of stuff. But I really savor that element of the role. And I think more than ever, it has to be done in a very modern way. Beyonce doesn't need, in a hard way, a GQ cover or any other piece of press. I haven't looked this morning at how many followers she has versus how many GQ has, but she definitely has more. But at the same time, there is still this recognition of the thing that I love about making magazine covers in this era is I'm like, I want to take Beyonce someplace she wouldn't go without GQ. And I also am prepared for her to take me and GQ someplace we wouldn't go if she weren't the specific subject. And I think that's very different from an era where it was like, if you were going to be on this magazine's cover, the magazine had all the power and you had to like submit to their makeover and all that kind of stuff. Fully submit to their creative. And maybe it was never full submission like I'm painting it, but it was much closer to that. And the balance of power has evolved, and I just love and savor the push and pull of modern magazine making, cover making, image making, collaboration. And the other thing that's so exciting about it is if you don't understand the talent that you're working with, let's say a cover star is kind of like, I love GQ, I'll do whatever you want. And we render their image in a way that is off to their fans, that cover will be a failure because their fans want to see the stars that they love and like an exciting new twist on who they are, but they don't want to see a total magazine makeover. I was trying to think of the talk show host that did like Maury Povich. I don't know.
You're lost.
Jimmy Towns?
Yeah.
Jimmy Towns. Oprah.
Yeah. So it's this
Ricky
cool.
Lake?
It's
We
this
could keep going.
Ricky Lake. Yes.
You say it's a failure, though. By what metric? Like, so much of it is about shareability and social. Does newsroom matter at all? How would you measure a failure, even?
I, of course, try to go by and would like to say that I go by my own internal compass and gut instincts only, and I don't care about anything else. But if we were to publish a cover with somebody and everyone who cared about that talent hated it and thought it was like a violation of their favorite star, that would feel like a fail for sure.
Going back to our Beyonce history, you have to make a lot of concessions in this day and age. For example, Beyonce stipulated that the writer of her cover story was like somebody's niece, like not a writer. And we were like, okay, you're Beyonce. That will happen. So how do you feel about that? It's not even horse trading at this point. If they're willing to do it, you take it.
Yeah, we noticed that she did the interview by email, for example.
Yeah. So that is an example of a concession that I was willing to make in the case of Beyonce that I generally outright refuse to make. But I felt that we had the opportunity to get a really in-depth back and forth interview with her. Given the circumstances, I felt that it was a win for the audience, basically, for us to agree to that. And so you're measuring things differently every time and the trade-offs and artists willing to go different. But I think one of the things I'm most proud of about the current iteration of GQ is we have really held the line on access to talent. And I feel great about the level of access that we got with Beyonce. And so I'm not going to talk myself into what I'm not, and this doesn't go for anybody else. This is for me and GQ. For me to be like, I will never agree to an email interview, even though I think we were being presented with a very rare opportunity to get a very in-depth email interview with talent that people really care what they have to say and who had a constellation of interesting things going on. For me, that would have been like a really silly line to draw where you're holding a principle just to hold a principle and not being smart and dynamic about the way you're thinking about the opportunity. And every day you're measuring and remeasuring that all the time. But like I was saying, in general, I think GQ gets amazing access to its interview subjects. And let's be real, people would prefer to get the great fashion shoot and be on their merry way. But they want the cover and the whole look enough that we're able, because we hold the line and we're super demanding about what we require, we're able to get it. And then we're just really clear about at what point do you have to walk away. You got to find the middle ground with people in these negotiations. And sometimes there isn't middle ground. So we walked away, and that happens all the time. We do that as well.
You said yourself something we were going to bring up, thank you very much, that it's an era in which they don't, quote, need the magazine in the way that they once did. But you guys do still are one of the few really who still get AAA list celebrities. Last month, it was Brad Pitt and George Clooney. We wondered, we said AAA, so that's, what would you call it? Six
A's in a pool.
Matching white suit.
Wet
A-list. You heard it here, folks. But can you talk a little bit about the decision to put Brad Pitt on the cover at this time when he's, for the first time ever, a controversial pick in some ways?
Yeah, sure. There's a ongoing conversation between GQ and Brad Pitt going back a very long time. And then for me personally, as editor-in-chief, we did a cover with him when I was the editor-in-chief of GQ Style.
Oh, we remember. It was like 40 pages.
Yes. Yeah, good. That's always the goal. Where we went to 3 different national parks with him, and it was, in a way, I would say like a precursor to what became this thread of the new masculinity that GQ has been exploring. So this was several years before the new masculinity issue that we did in November of 2019 with Pharrell. But it was just the beginning of this idea of making GQ a place where you invite people to open up and be vulnerable. That was a big marker for us, that cover story. There's been just an ongoing relationship, editorial relationship, not anything else, with Brad from there. And then we were also able to work with George Clooney for the first time in many years for GQ. There was a long Clooney gap. And during COVID, we were able to work with Clooney again and establish a rapport there. This was the opportunity to put the two pieces together and to have a conversation about masculinity and aging. And yes, of course, they have a movie together and they had something to promote, but we were able to look at male friendship and all of these themes that have been a big part of this era of GQ.
But that being said, did you feel like internally you had to overcome any doubts about whether or not now was the right time for Brad? Or was it like, again, we have this relationship, he is who he is, of course we're going to do it?
Everything is always a conversation and a measurement. And one thing I rely on is a dynamic conversation with staff. We all have our individual opinions and we all discuss these things. And ultimately, it felt like the right September cover for us.
Let's go back to 2019 with that Pharrell in the gown, the new masculinity. We remember that very vividly. That was such a moment when you took over. That was now 5 years ago. So what is the new masculinity? We've been through several cycles since then. Where do you see the pendulum swinging to now? And what does the culture want from men now in those terms? I feel like in 2019, it was really about gender bending and it was very hot post Me Too. Like, where are we now?
Yeah. American culture and American opinion and all of the battlegrounds on social media and on the linear news, all of the places where those things are fought, as we know, I mean, we're in the middle of an election cycle, are extremely stratified. I think there were, of course, people grumbling in the heart of the Me Too movement even, which is when we published the new masculinity issue, which was basically us saying GQ has been one of the go-to voices for what's going on with men and in men's lives and in men's heads. I think we were in a moment in Me Too where it was long overdue that men face a reckoning for so much behavior, so much cultural baggage. But I think as these things often go, it started out with, it was just criticism. And what we felt and what we heard from our audience was a desire to change, a recognition that change was very much overdue, but not really any constructive path forward being offered. So the new masculinity issue was like, okay, this is this longstanding voice of, I don't know, like male culture to an extent, and maybe we can help chart a progressive and constructive path forward. So it's not just critique and men should feel awful. It's okay, yes, once those of us who are thoughtful and sensitive have processed some of that, what can we actually do about that? And so that's a conversation that we've been seeking to continue. Since then, like so many of these conversations, the pendulum has swung in the other direction. Everything just gets written off as woke these days and all of that. But what we've been really exploring is this idea that men now, it is permissible to be vulnerable and to share how you're feeling, to have insecurities. And that what has been profound to me is finding that almost anyone that we've interviewed over the last 5 years, if you open the door in the very public pages of GQ for a musician or an actor or an athlete or whoever to be vulnerable, they will choose to walk through that door with you, which I think is really remarkable, because the perception of our era is that everyone's media trained, everything's overly controlled, nobody is being authentic. And I just think hopefully the stories that we're publishing all the time are proof that's not the case. And what I think it's become is a dynamic conversation. It's many notes and there's not agreement across the board, but for us, it's just like this ongoing exploration. And even on the cover of the new masculinity issue, the cover line begins an exploration of, rather than a definitive dossier of how to be a good man in 2019. It wasn't that at all. It was like, let's understand what's going on with challenges to gender norms. Let's understand what's going on with sexual violence. Let's begin to unpack these things. And the place that we were trying to get editorially, and I think we have, it's never perfect, but a certain degree achieved, is you see the sort of pulp of that conversation reflected in everything from our grooming coverage to a big cover story to a piece of reporting that's more on the nose about gender somehow. And we've reported from men's groups and all these different places where these conversations are active. So trying to make it like direct theme, sub theme, meta theme, like to play on all those layers at once. And ultimately still trying to help men see themselves in some of these stories and hopefully to find a path forward that isn't just like me and my nature are bad and violent. But you have to recognize those elements too. Sorry.
We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Jeremy Leslie at Mag Culture. We're proud to support the Print is Dead podcast because we love magazines too. Visit magculture.com and see why print is far from over. It's just getting started. Read the journal for interviews and reviews, listen to our podcasts, visit our shop in London and online, and come to our live events in London and New York. We love magazines. Subscribe to our newsletter for weekly updates, all at magculture.com.
That's just really interesting to think about GQ as like a permission structure. Can you share an example of, we were talking about celebrities, so a celebrity who you feel like you gave that permission to be vulnerable and you're surprised by the outcome?
Yeah, sure. Just looking around my office and I'm looking at our Kevin Costner cover from a couple months ago, like icon of a different era of masculinity. But when you dig into Zach Baron's piece with him, which to our point about access was reported over several months and many hours of both observation of him directing his film and focused journalists to subject interviewing, he's talking about divorce. He's talking about his dreams as a young actor. He's talking about risk, like literally risking the family farm to make his magnum opus, all of these things. And I think that thread continues through it. And then, or to the September conversation, which is also Zach Baron with Brad Pitt and George Clooney. There's basically like a, you guys still evolving moment and getting their reflections on that.
Yeah, Zach Baronson's a busy guy.
He's a very busy guy, very talented. That's why he's so busy.
Yes, props to Zach Barron, absolutely. This may be over extrapolating. We don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but I just wonder now that we're in this election cycle where it's like masculinity is on the ballot, right? And Hulk Hogan is speaking at the RNC, and then the Democrats are all being their best husbandly selves. And I just want to hear from you on how this thinking and like this weird moment for masculinity, like how does that filter into your thinking about how to make a men's magazine?
I guess my observation of there's stuff really active like yesterday and today around Donald Trump attempting to re-adjudicate his rape accusations and saying all kinds of really shocking, vile stuff. And I guess the impression that I came away from of observing the two conventions was, I think you were hinting at this, Maggie, there's a level of stagecraft going on both sides. Of course, convention is literally just stagecraft. But so beyond the obvious and necessary elements of it, you see the Democrats really carefully honing the message and presenting the men in different ways in relationship to the women, I think in ways that are interesting, trying to complicate traditional power dynamics, but sometimes being a little bit ham-fisted in how carefully crafted that is. Sometimes you're like, crave some authenticity. And then on the other side, I just find, man, it is disappointing. Growing up in Atlanta, Georgia, I understand the little c conservative point of view very well. And it is shocking that the side of the debate that is ostensibly representing little c conservatism just contains so much hatefulness towards so many different people, broad swaths of people. In a way, to me, it's disappointing that those things are just swamping what should be a really dynamic conversation about the future of our country, what is a longstanding debate between big government and small government. And it's so gone. That's what I was observing as I was watching masculinity be performed. And the dueling conventions is like a lot of hate in one and a lot of craft in the other.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I do think, though, that it must make for some pretty juicy editorial meetings. I mean, the country is sort of divided on how to be a man. It's fodder.
Definitely is. I think it's also uninteresting to be really predictable and by the book on that, and to always just be trying to get it right and to send the right signal. And I think we try to make some challenging, surprising, not easy. I don't know, a good magazine should have a little bit of danger to it. If all you're doing is the magazine version of that stagecraft, I think that can feel hollow as well.
Okay, now I've got a really elegant transition for you all.
See, she tees it up. She tees it up real good.
But with the Mississippi accent, everything is elegant.
Well, let's talk about fashion. So when you took over GQ from Jim Nelson, you'd worked there for 12 years.
Yeah, something like that.
And under Jim, the famous mix was a lot of men jumping in suits and long form journalism, like 6,000 word swashbuckling adventures by Sean Flynn.
Yep.
And now your magazine strikes us as a lot more high fashion, younger counterculture. Can you tell us how you've recalibrated the balance, the high level vision, and the priorities? Because it definitely has changed.
Yeah. I grew up under Jim Nelson and the creative director who ran the fashion department, Jim Moore, and learned literally everything I know from the two of them, the dynamic duo of Jims. And I absolutely worked my tail off in those 12 years under them and loved every minute of it and was wholly committed to the project. When I got the opportunity to sort of reimagine GQ and lead it myself, I just had some moves that I thought it was time to make that would reflect my personal sensibilities. Part of that from a strategic perspective was thinking about what has the internet wrought, essentially. Because GQ is a legacy magazine. We've been around for many decades. And I think in the 90s and the 2000s, there was an era where magazines like GQ were these general interest behemoths. So GQ used to actually claim to speak to American men. And it did, along with Esquire and certain sections of some of the national newspapers. And those were your options when it came to printed media. Through the aughts, magazines like GQ became these very general interest publications where like anything that might be interesting to a man belonged in GQ. And then I think with the rise of internet culture and social media, that really disrupted that. So the internet and social media thrive on niche. It is very hard to be general interest in internet culture. And I just felt that the idea of speaking broadly to American men, doing fashion that was speaking to the kind of regular guy who's trying to get dressed in a snazzy way for the office. By the time I was editor-in-chief of GQ, quote unquote, regular guys were no longer reading fashion magazines. And GQ has been and always will be a fashion magazine. So it was like, in this era, you have to be super declarative about your point of view, super honed topically. You have to be really clear with people. We do these types of things and we don't do any of that other stuff. And you grow by depth in your niche rather than having the wide open barn door, like broad and shallow. So that was the strategy, the big picture thinking. And then we just got to work at defining all the things that we cared about. The other thing I would say is that what I learned in my time at an independent music magazine, the Fader magazine, where I was from 2003 to 2007, was that a magazine is just a community platform. Everybody wanted to go to the parties, the Fader, the parties more than anything else. I just realized that one of the most powerful sense of community and togetherness and bringing people together and connecting them with culture was one of any publication's greatest strengths. So we really leaned into that as well. And I think if you guys don't mind, there's an image that I have in my head, which is that
We don't
GQ
mind.
Okay, cool. I'm going to go for it then. It's a little corny, but it works for me. So we'll see how I do. GQ is like a platform, almost like a stage. And this audience has been accruing with people coming in, some people going, but over time it's been growing since it was founded in 1957. And all we do is reach out our hand and invite interesting people up to stand on that platform and address this audience that's been built over the years. And that can be anyone from Beyonce to our fitness columnist, Joe Holder, to a chef, to our staff of writers, to a one-time writer, to a photographer. It's, hey, come up here with us, make something with us, and then show it to this crew. Me and my staff can't make a single day of GQ.com, a single day of @GQ on Instagram or any of the other platforms, or certainly not an issue of the magazine. We need all these other people. So you want people to feel like GQ is theirs. And I think we've been able to do that successfully. And that's why the parties are fun and people follow us on social media. I don't know.
It was this beautiful picture that you just painted for us.
Yeah.
Right. You just took us on. Kind of your pitch to Anna Wintour when you were going for this job. Everybody said that it was obvious that Will was going to get the job. Tell us about it.
No, I never pitched Anna. I never went for the job, but I did have the opportunity in 2016 to be the founding editor-in-chief of GQ Style, which was a quarterly sort of high fashion spinoff of GQ. And it wasn't intentional, but I guess that was my opportunity to show what I could do. Basically, when I actually got the job, I got a call to Anna's office, and usually she comes to see me. At the time, she had a Vogue office and an executive office. It was in her executive office. We met a lot, and that wasn't normally how we met. And I was really confused about what the nature of the meeting was going to be because we just had this steady cadence of the way that we met, and this was different. And she just said, would you like to be the editor-in-chief of GQ? And I said, yes, that would be great. And that was it.
And
So
how did you feel inside of your body in that moment?
I felt great. And then I went back to my office and I spoke to my wife and then another woman in my life who was an important mentor. And she said, you have just become the face of a men's magazine in the middle of the Me Too movement. She was like, congrats and shit, but let's slow down for a second and think about this. And that was a really profound, I got chills just repeating it to you guys. That was a really profound moment for me and basically led directly to the new masculinity issue. Because from that moment, I just understood, and forgive me, I've said it this way before, but she was like, here's a challenge. And I was like, oh, I know what to do with the challenge. Either see it as a challenge or see it as an opportunity. And I was like, I got to figure out how to make this an opportunity. We got to do something. Instead of being scared to publish GQ in the middle of the Me Too movement where people did not fucking want to hear from men, shut up and listen, literally. It was the heart of shut up and listen. We had to publish every day. So I was like, how are we going to do that? And And that was very inspiring.
But it's really more than that. It's a double whammy because it's Me Too plus whatever is happening to magazines right now. It's like trying to keep a magazine afloat in the middle of the Me Too movement and redefine it at the same time. That's a heavy load.
That part just didn't intimidate me because I came from the Fader where we had 5 people sweating in an office together and $200 between us to make an amazing magazine. And I always thought, I just remember over the course of my career at GQ being like, it would be better if there were less, just because you can get in these big machines and it's hard to be like.
And Anna heard you say that. And then she said, how would you like to be the next editor of GQ? Well,
I'm really like, yeah, I should be grouchy about that, but I totally set that up and then walked into it. Thank you. Yeah.
But obviously you've done it very well. And now people keep saying that you're going to be her successor. How does it feel when you hear those words?
I don't
like
hear
the creative director. You've heard it.
I don't listen to any of that stuff.
What's the title, Maggie?
Global Artistic Director.
I've never had less to say about anything.
Have you ever thought about running for office?
Oh my God, on what platform?
Because you're doing a great job at dodging these hard questions.
I'm running on the Well-Tailored Pants platform. We'll see how many votes I get.
We'll be right back.
Print is Dead is made possible by the support of the Society of Publication Designers. The SPD powers the future of visual storytelling, setting the standard for editorial excellence and shaping the future of visual culture. For more information, visit spd.org.
So now you're also in charge of the beloved online music magazine Pitchfork. And there was the big brouhaha when Condé Nast announced that Pitchfork was moving into the Will Welch portfolio, and people on Twitter were pissed. Could you just clear this up for us? What happened to Pitchfork? How's it different now?
Yeah, totally.
What's your involvement?
So the brouhaha was just a misunderstanding because the way the announcement was received, they didn't say it was moving under the Will Welch portfolio. It's just it was rolling under GQ, and people thought that meant that Pitchfork was going away. My perspective was like, all of this is new. We're figuring it out. We're going to let everybody say what they want to say. And a lot of it was really, I think, valid think pieces about the diminishment of music journalism and in many ways, the diminishment of criticism across genres. So a lot of the pieces that I read that I thought were quite smart used this misunderstanding around Pitchfork as the timing to talk about something that I think is really valid. And that actually, I think the truth of what we're doing with Pitchfork has a lot to say about. So it was totally a misunderstanding. Essentially, Pitchfork is remaining Pitchfork. It is still publishing as Pitchfork. It is not like becoming gq.com/Pitchfork or anything like that. It's all just continuing. I have honestly, again, sorry if I sound corny, but the honor of leading it from a big picture strategy perspective, and had the opportunity to go out and find a leader for the day-to-day content. I don't have my hands in the day-to-day of it. I'm really thinking about the big picture direction, the overall strategy, like the big picture work I did around GQ, but with GQ, I'm very involved in the day-to-day. I hired a young entrepreneurial music writer named Mano Sundaresan, who had started this incredible blog called No Bells. And he just built, just on his own will and with some code, a whole culture and community of new music writers. To talk to him about it, he talks about how they were frustrated because they were sick of getting their pitches rejected at places. And so Mano started No Bells and recruited a bunch of his friends and their friends to write for this site. And I was just like really blown away by the work itself, and also meeting him and talking to him about what his vision for Pitchfork would be.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like Pitchfork.
It is an awful lot like Pitchfork.
It sounds a lot like the beginning of Pitchfork. I'll just push back a little. I think also the reason people on Twitter were freaking out is because a lot of their favorite critics were losing their jobs. It sounds like you had a different plan for that, but I just don't want to move on to the next thing about saying that's also why people understandably were so upset.
Yeah. And all of us who work in media are exhausted from the constant wash and tumble of budget cuts and layoffs, and our colleagues losing their jobs and great beloved outlets closing. The people who follow this stuff closely are understandably assuming the worst anytime an announcement is made. And so it was definitely a case of that. But no, you're right. There were serious cuts, and that's a painful part of it.
Well, not to pile on, but
No, this is an honest conversation. It's all good.
no, one thing that struck me, I remember several of the editorials I read about it that were intriguing to me because of what we do, is that one thing that people seem to be pissed off about is just that Pitchfork was being shoved under a men's vertical, right? And the idea that implied that there was something gendered about music fandom, right? I just thought that was an interesting argument. And I don't know, what do you have to say about that one?
Well, just that it's not actually what's happened other than me being a man. So it is true. No, seriously, it is very relevant in that regard. But Pitchfork is not a wing of the GQ men's media empire. Pitchfork stands alone. But yeah, I understood where a lot of that tension came from as well, because if you turn on Sirius XMU, it's girl-led bands or entirely girl bands, like song after song. All the biggest pop stars in the world, including the one on the cover of GQ this morning, are women. And I understand, but again, it was based on a misunderstanding.
Yeah. Well, thank you for talking about this.
In moments like that, I just feel like I can have a meltdown and try to tell everyone on the internet what to really think. Or you can say, wow, this isn't going in a great direction, but we're going to take it on the chin, and then we're going to earn everybody's trust back. I was just beginning to take on this new aspect of my role right then, and just be like, okay, we're going to be patient and we're going to win people over by getting this right. Because look how much everybody cares about Pitchfork. People really care about Pitchfork.
Yeah.
And we can earn their trust back. And sometimes when that ball starts rolling downhill, you just got to let it be.
You are a chill guy. You're awful. No wonder the celebrities like you so much.
I don't know. I guess I probably have an interior intensity and an exterior chill or something like that. I don't feel chill, but it always feels like a compliment when it comes my way. So thank you.
Yeah, we have no chill, so it's just a big compliment coming from us.
Rachel, speak for yourself. I am. So chill. But anyway, we were talking about gender, I think. And
Gender, we love to talk about gender.
so we write this newsletter about women's magazines. And so it's pretty clear where we are.
It's called The Spread. You can find us on Substack.
Such a good name, guys.
Thanks. Well, it means a lot coming from you.
No, you killed it with the name.
It's just because we like things like peanut butter and hummus. We love women's media and we wear it on our sleeves. But we like to ask our guests about whether women's media is still relevant, whether it still has a future. One of those guests was your mentee, Willa Bennett. Congrats.
Mazel tov. Well,
We love Willa. Shout out. Yeah.
The new, editor-in-chief of Cosmo.
and 17.
And 17, yeah.
And 17.
Speaking of portfolios, she's going.
You guys could compare portfolios. She's very young. So she said she thinks of magazines in general as being post-gender. She's not shopping for a men's magazine or a women's magazine. She's just shopping for a good magazine. I don't know if we personally can get there, but like we never get to talk to people on the dude side of the aisle. So that's like all a big long windup. But gendered media, are we past that? Do men still need a safe place to talk about ingrown hairs? Or like, where do you stand on this?
It's a little bit convoluted to express, but it feels like it's pretty easy to do in terms of assigning and publishing stories, which is that we don't wake up in the morning and come to work at the men's magazine GQ. We just come to work and make GQ. And as I said earlier, we've been like carefully honing the point of view and trying to be like really rigorous about this is what we're up to. We're going to let go of all these other things. And to me, some of the raw material of that, like men's clothes. Do we work with women's clothes? Yes. We dress Beyonce in women's clothes. We dress men in women's clothes. Sometimes there's a bunch of clothes that it's easier not to gender at all. But essentially, one of the raw materials of GQ is a bunch of men's fashion and you dress somebody in it. We dress women in men's fashion all the time. But to me, like where we are in terms of the relationship with the reader is not like, why would I look at that picture? I'm a woman and that's a man wearing men's clothes. How could it ever make me feel anything or be interesting to me? That's just like absurd in this day and age where even the just average person on Instagram is extremely sophisticated consumer of media and digester of fashion images. Like even if they aren't passionate about it, you just can like album covers are fashion images like 80% of the time now. So I think there are people that just relate to the GQ point of view, and Willa did a great job at GQ of really riding hard for what young people respond to and what they want to see. And so little of the conversation was like, here's how we're going to talk to men versus here's how we're going to talk to women. It was just like, wouldn't it be cool if we did this project or reported this feature or worked with this talent and surprised their audience and ours by presenting them in this way. So we're not throwing out gender in any way. I think GQ is still a men's magazine in some regard, but what we're actually doing when we're just making it all day, every day is thinking about telling compelling stories that feel like they're very specific to our point of view. Another way to think about it would be like a GQ way of doing a story could bear more resemblance to a Vogue or a Highsnobiety way than it would an Esquire way. Even though traditionally it's thought of like, well, GQ and Esquire are going to be the most similar to each other because those are the two major men's magazines. So in a way, the gendered element is no longer the thing that is driving people to engage. It's less a part of the conversation. That was convoluted. How did I do?
Oh, I thought you did great. Well, aces. Cool. But I had this theory, Rachel's not quite sold on it, but that when we were prepping for this, we were talking about the current, do you see how she's cocking her head to the side?
I think I might agree. Say, and I'll weigh in.
It feels like the editorial balance of GQ and where the money goes. When you look at GQ, we're editors, we can see where the money goes to make things, right?
Yeah.
It feels like it's now operating in a more traditional women's magazine economics, right? Mm-hmm. Like it feels the length of the stories and the depth of the stories and the focus on fashion. I don't know. And that's not a critique. That's the
Maggie, the modern GQ reader reads like a lady. And serving her.
When you and I both were the same age, when we were coming up, like it was like GQ had the long stories that they would send people to the Arctic to write, and you had to go to GQ. The women's magazines wouldn't give it the space or the investment because they were first and foremost fashion magazines. The quality of the writing and reporting and celebrity coverage, everything is great. It's just interesting to see GQ feel like it's a capital F fashion magazine like the women's magazines have been.
Thank you, Rachel. I think that your readers really love cats too, is what I've heard.
We have one last question. This has been especially a blast because we often on this podcast, we are hearing from people who are talking about like the wildest expenditures during the town car era of magazines in the 1990s. And so this has been really fun because you're thoroughly modern Willie, if I may.
You may at this point.
So thinking about how your predecessor had a bathroom in his office and a driver. And according to the very nice style section piece on you in the New York Times a couple of years ago, you don't even have a window in your office.
No window.
Different, the times. So here you are with us as this beacon of optimism about media present and future. What is up with that, Will? How did you become like this?
Where do you get this optimism?
Can you give us? It's a little contagious. I'm getting a little.
I'm glad you're getting a little. I don't know. Okay, here's what it comes down to for me. It comes down to creative freedom. I have total creative freedom at GQ. Myself and my team, we do whatever we want. We publish whatever we want. We do not have the budgets that I enjoyed when I was working under Jim Nelson and that the media at large once had. They're no longer there. I don't have a bathroom in my office. I walk around the hallway and I pee next to my colleagues. It's, by the way, totally fine. Sometimes we get work done while we wash our hands. What we have is total creative freedom to do our thing, get out our ideas. And I've had some pretty wild ideas to me at my time as the editor of GQ. And I have been able to figure out through smart accounting, thank you, Director of Operations Sarah Schmidt, and other tricks of the trade, I have figured out to do all of those things. We made it rain Pharrells over Paris. We went to the south of France and got Monsieurs Pitt and Clooney to get into the pool. I have been to Africa with my co-conspirator Mobolaji Dawadu, GQ Style and GQ's fashion director, many times to shoot street style images. If we can dream it, we can go do it. I'm trying to find something about that element to be pessimistic about. We've already talked about layoffs, budget cuts, beloved titles entirely closing. I have been through many rounds of all that stuff, not the titles closing part, but the budget cuts, the layoffs. It is fucking awful and it's hellish. Otherwise, in terms of the editorial storytelling, the people in my world, maybe they used to have a bathroom in the office, but they didn't get to do whatever they could think of.
Yeah.
There used to be A/B testing on covers. Is the audience going to like this picture of the smiling white guy, or are they going to like that picture of the smiling white guy? Like,
But you don't do that anymore?
Hell no.
We loved this.
No, we don't do that anymore.
Wait, somebody isn't doing cover lines testing right now?
Come on, Maggie, don't troll me this late in the pod. Absolutely not.
Well, thank you so much for being such a great sport. This was
This was really fun.
You guys are hilarious and awesome. Let's do it again sometime.
Yes.
We're just a bunch of Southerners with blonde highlights sitting around chatting.
Just us girls.
Just us, girl. All right. Thanks, girl.
Thanks.
I gotta go get my nails done. Bye.
Hi, I'm Maggie Bullock,
And I'm Rachel Baker.
and together we write the Spread newsletter on Substack. It's a weekly one-stop shop for the best magazine stories about, for, and by women, plus juicy gossip and hot culture recs. Thanks for listening to our latest collaboration with Print is Dead, Long Live Print.
For more on this and all of our episodes, visit our website where, in addition to complete transcripts of all our interviews, along with portfolios, archival photos, links, and other great information on our guests, you'll find our blog, Entry Points, about all things magazine, and our ever-expanding swag shop with all kinds of great custom merch. You can also support the podcast by clicking the adorable yellow button at the top of the page, all available at magazium.co.
Print is Dead, Long Live Print is a member of the Hub and Spoke Audio Collective, a nonprofit association of audio storytellers dedicated to promoting and sustaining high-quality, independent podcasting. Learn more at hubspokeaudio.org.
Magazium is made possible by the generous support of listeners like you. If you love our shows and can't wait for new episodes, or even if you just listen from time to time and love knowing we're here, please consider making a donation to help keep us going. Visit magazium.co/support.
Print is Dead, Long Live Print is a production of Magazium, LLC. For more information, visit our website, magazium.co, or follow us on social media at magazium.co. Please give us a like and a review on your favorite podcast app. It really helps. Thanks very much for listening.